A warm welcome to the show. Today we're talking about a woman who needs no introduction, Maria Skłodowska-Curie. A new exhibition in Warsaw, however, reveals a very different side of her life, shifting the focus from great discoveries to love, freedom, and the everyday moments that shaped who she was. To discuss, I have Konrad Pyzel, Maria Skłodowska-Curie Museum, joining me right now. Hello and welcome, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Hello, good afternoon.
So let's start with the main item at the exhibition, that is the bicycle. Why was it so important?
Well, while thinking of a subject, of a topic of our new exhibition, we wanted to show a different side of life of Marie Skłodowska-Curie and her husband Pierre Curie. We wanted to focus on something that they were sharing together, but not laboratory work, not scientific discoveries, but private life. And we think that it's still not so well known that from time to time they were leaving the laboratory, and in our opinion it's not a kind of a common knowledge that they were leaving the lab and they were enjoying spending time on fresh air, riding a bicycle. For Marie Skłodowska-Curie, sport was a very important part of her life. Not only riding a bicycle, but she was also swimming, ice skating. So it was this second part, in fact, of life, and that was something that she was sharing with her loved husband, Pierre Curie.
So this exhibition also concentrates on their relationship. Was it unusual at the time?
Yes, it was. It was unusual from the very beginning, in fact, because their marriage, their wedding started with just a civil ceremony. They decided to do it that way in Sceaux, that was a city nearby Paris, and they invited just a very close circle of relatives, family and friends, and it was a very simple ceremony, in fact, taking place in the garden of the Curie family in Sceaux. And exactly, in fact, their relationship, their marriage was based, of course, of common scientific work. It was like the base. But also, they were sharing the passion for nature, for going outside, for spending their lives as they wanted, so also freely. In fact, I suppose also without other people. So that's why this bicycle was so important, because it was not a mean of public transport. So they were able to go where they wanted, and when they wanted, and in the way they wanted. And that was very important for them together.
They do sound very modern, but why did you think that it was important to, shine the spotlight on this part of Maria Skłodowska-Curie's life?
We wanted to show them together as a modern couple. Yes, indeed. And for us, well, we also were thinking about something that is, it would be good to present to our audience as a kind of an addition to our main exhibition during the spring and summer season, something that simply fits what's going outside. And that's why we were focusing on the bicycle journeys, on the bicycle roads nearby Paris, but also in other regions of France, like Auvergne or Brittany.
And in a very unusual move, you're also inviting the audiences outside, literally.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very important part of our exhibition and program that accompanies our display. So we are inviting our audience, people, for walks in Warsaw, but also for bicycle journeys as well, like on the footsteps of Maria Skłodowska-Curie, because, in our museum we also emphasize that she was born in Warsaw, in this very place where our museum is located right now. But she was living in many places in Warsaw. So we've got not only our museum, the house when she was born, not only Radio Institute, but also other places in the old town, the new town. So that's also a good opportunity to present them, to present the Warsaw of Maria Skłodowska-Curie.
And the museum is also very unique because it is the only biographical museum in the world devoted to Maria Skłodowska-Curie.
That's correct. Of course, we got also the Curie Museum in Paris, but it's mostly focused on the Radium Institute in Paris and generally Curie family, and mostly about Irene and Frédéric Joliot-Curie. Marie Skłodowska-Curie for them is a kind of a patron or a founder. For us, it's very important person for Polish history that was born in Warsaw. And yes, that's correct. We are the only museum in the whole world that presents the biography of famous Polish scientist Maria Skłodowska-Curie.
And if you could share some fun facts about Maria Skłodowska-Curie, what would these be?
Great question, because there are, in fact, so many. I just mentioned that she was also swimming and ice skating, but for instance, we know that, but okay, I'm not sure if it's a true story or a kind of a tidbit or something like that, but after the First World War, she took part in the League of Nations, and they had meetings in Geneva, in Switzerland, and we know that, well, from time to time, she was taking a bath in the lake in Geneva. So even during these important scientific meetings or political meetings, she wanted always to find some space, some free time to practice sport.
And speaking about the bicycle, I mean, could it be seen as a quiet revolution? How many things have changed because of the bike?
It was very important, especially for women at that time. We are at the end of the 19th century with really strict rules for women, for their social life, let's say so. And now, thanks to bicycle, women are quite free, in fact, because they are not dependent on men. They could go where they want and freely, without the company of men. Also, it was very important that the bicycles they have, Marie and Pierre Curie, were quite modern in the means of, for instance, same size of wheels, chain drive, and things like that. And especially for chain drive, it was quite dangerous to wear the, let's say, normal outfit as women were wearing at that time. So that's why so-called bloomers, a kind of mix between skirt and trousers, was invented by Amélie Bloomer. That's the origin of the name bloomers. And in fact, it was a kind of attire that I suppose might be quite shocking, maybe not in the very center of Paris or other big cities in France. But for example, in province, yes, it was quite shocking, and it changed a lot in means of social life of women, attire, spending free time. And in this revolution, because we may put it that way, Maria Skłodowska-Curie was taking a very important part.
The exhibition also connects Polish and French heritage, and I was wondering, was Skłodowska-Curie an outsider in France?
In fact, I suppose it depends of a particular moment. Of course, from the very beginning, because she moved to France in 1891 at the age of 24, and she became a student of the Sorbonne University. So at the beginning, I suppose so, but the marriage with Pierre Curie changed a lot, almost changed everything. And step by step, in fact, she became a part of a French society, also French scientific society. But, as I said, it depends on a particular moment, because sometimes, well, especially after Pierre Curie's death that took place in 1906, and because of the love affair between Maria Skłodowska-Curie and Paul Langevin, it was very possible that she left France. In fact, it never happened, as we perfectly know. She stayed in France, in Paris, until the end of her life. But this relation between Maria Skłodowska-Curie and the country and the state was, I would say, not so easy during the whole lifetime of our scientist.
And was she considering coming back to Poland? Was that an option?
I suppose it was rather considered by others, maybe not by herself personally, but just before the First World War in like 1912, 1913, well, she was invited to Poland to run the Radium Institute in Poland. She was invited by such famous people as, for instance, Henryk Sienkiewicz, so it was really quite serious. Before the First World War, when Poland did not exist as an independent state, for her it was in fact not a true option to change France, like the center of the scientific life of Europe in almost whole world, to a place, in fact, on the suburbs of Russian Empire. So, well, she wanted to stay in Paris. She started Radium Institute there, but quite frequently she visited Poland for many, many times during the whole lifetime, for scientific reasons, of course, also for family meetings as well.
And she did have a lot of interesting friends, including Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about this particular friendship?
She was just a part of an international society of scientists. And for instance, they meet from 1911 in Brussels for a kind of congress for physicians quite frequently. And then, during these congresses in Brussels, she was meeting Albert Einstein, but also other scientific fames of that time, like Niels Bohr, for instance, a very famous Danish physician. But also, after the First World War, she was quite involved in the activity of the League of Nations. So this was like another field of international cooperation, not only in scientific field, but also in the fields of politics and culture. So Albert Einstein is definitely one of the most famous, probably the most famous person that is somehow related to Maria Skłodowska-Curie, but not the only one.
Now, going back to the exhibition itself, there's also an animation by Zofia Brzezińska as part of the exhibition. So how does it complement the historical narrative?
In fact, it was the first part of our exhibition that we started with. So, like, the first idea was that, that we want to ask a modern artist to participate somehow in our program. And we were thinking about the cycling journeys. So we invited Zofia Brzezińska from the Academy of the Fine Arts in Warsaw. And this cooperation was great and really smooth. So it's like, during the many stages of the project, of preparation of this animated drawing, in fact, we got just very few remarks that something should be added or corrected. It's like Zofia Brzezińska was catching our ideas. It was really great. But as I said, it was just the beginning, like our first invention, what we wanted to present to our audience during this exhibition. But then we thought, okay, the animation will be about the cycling journeys, but maybe let's also put this most important and well-known photograph of Marie and Pierre posing with their bicycles. Okay, if we add the photograph, let's say something about the photograph. Then we were looking carefully on the photos, spotting not only bicycles, but also the environment, the plants in the garden and so on. And that's step by step. We wanted to say more and more to our audience, and that's why this exhibition is not only about the bicycles, but also about the journeys, about the fashion of the time, about the bikes themselves, about the wedding, and about all that is somehow related to their joint passion.
Konrad, so what would you like the audience to take away from this exhibition? What is the message that...
Basic message definitely would be that even famous people, even famous scientists that we think we know quite well, there is also something to be discovered. There is a kind of hidden message, let's say. There is something that we don't know about them. And their passion for going out, for enjoying nature, for common cycling journeys, it's like the basic message. But we also want to say that it's not only about biking, that it's about everyday life, it's about change, it's about revolution, it's about something much, much bigger. It's about some ideas, these basic ideas of the life of Maria and Pierre Curie, like freedom. This is probably the key word of this exhibition, that they were really free people in every sense of the word, scientific, social, and private.
Konrad Pyzel, thank you so very much for joining us and for shedding more light on this incredible character of Maria Skłodowska-Curie. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.